You're watching Let the Quran Speak. How do we teach children about God? How do we cultivate an understanding of God amongst young children? When and where do we start? How do we explain God to them when they cannot see or hear God, and when their awareness of things is often limited to the present? And how do we teach them to love God and to feel a desire to please God and be accountable to Him? With me is Dr. Shabir Ali, President of the Islamic Information Center. Dr. Shabir, this is a hard task, and one in which anyone who lives in a society in which God is kind of put into the background would wonder, how do you introduce God to a very young child?
Well, a lot has to be imparted by way of example. Mm-hmm. You know, if you are with people and you start looking intently in a particular direction, then others will look in that direction too. Just out of curiosity, as a natural kind of response. Somehow people want to know what it is that you're looking at. And you could be looking at nothing, but still it invokes the same kind of response from those around you. It's more so in children, in subtle ways that we don't understand. In trying to understand various phobias, it is often noted that sometimes we develop phobias by observing our parents. Okay. So if the parents are afraid of centipedes, for example, or spiders or whatever, their responses would register in us in a subconscious manner from childhood. And so a person may grow up with this fear of spiders, not knowing where this fear came from, but it may be related to what they observed in their parents' behavior. So now, the flip side of this is that if parents are devoted to God, then children, this is like looking in that direction. Then the whole life is oriented towards service to God and service to humanity, the belief in God that's now manifest in their daily activities. Then the children will pick this up subconsciously as well. And they may have a belief in God without knowing exactly what God is. I mean, at one time as a kid, I thought that God must be, you know, the one who sends down rain by weeping, you know, because that's a childhood conception. Where do you get so much water from? Maybe God is up there weeping and we get the rain. But of course, thankfully, that was only a fleeting thought as a child. And then you grow up understanding more, and you come to realize that that God has so much power. But as a kid, you wouldn't have this full conception, but you would be influenced by the direction in which your parents are looking.
So would you have conversations with a child about God then? And at what age would that start?
I think it's best to just simply answer their questions. We have certain basic things that we do teach children, and at the early stage they would just simply memorize much of what we say. This is why it is mentioned that, I mean, Imam al-Ghazali mentioned that at first you teach children to memorize the Quran, and then only later you'll teach them the interpretation of the Quran. So it has to come in this pattern, because at the early stage they would not have the capacity to understand so fully. But that does not mean that we shouldn't explain anything from at all. And there are books which are written to explain Islam to younger children. For example, a book by Ghulam Sarwar, Islam for Younger People, and a series of books by Aisha Limu. These books are available wherever Muslim books are sold. They put things in a very simple manner. For example, Aisha Limu asks, okay, so you think about a tree, where does that tree come from? Okay, it comes from a certain seed, right? And then where does that seed come? It comes from another tree. Well, then, if you keep going back to trees and seeds, there must be some tree that wasn't there because of a seed, or some seed that wasn't there because of a tree. It's the old chicken and egg scenario, right? What came first? But there must be a starting point to all of this, and the best way of thinking is that God created the something that then now began the whole process of giving seeds and trees, or chicken and egg.
So we compare, we use examples from nature, or examples that are concrete to a child, and then connect it to God in some way.
Exactly. And other examples can be used. For example, Sheikh Dr. Abdullah Hakim Quick said that if you go into a room, well, this is more an example that will appeal to adults, but we can now make it bring it down to the level that children will understand. So you go into a room, you find that there is on the desk a piece of poetry written on a page. well, you must assume that somebody wrote this poetry. It didn't just simply come there. In a similar way, when we think about things being arranged in our universe, because a poetry is basically an orderly arrangement of letters in a way that brings out meaning. So when we see in our universe that things are so arranged that they bring out meaning and purpose and value and beauty, we must posit that there is a creator of all of this. Well, then let's put it at the child's level. Ask the child, okay, I've been telling you so many times to clean up the room and to arrange your toys, but you didn't. Okay, suppose you come into the room and you find that your toys are all arranged. You think your toys arranged themselves by themselves, or did somebody come in? Did mom come in and arrange the toys for you? He would naturally say, or she would naturally say, yeah, mom came in and did this for me. Well, in a similar way, nothing happens by itself. There must be someone who does all of the arranging and gives us what we need. Water everywhere, not a drop to drink. Who gives us the water that we drink? So we need water, and it is just there for us. Who put that there? There must be someone who made us and gave us this water. So in these simple ways, we can actually communicate to larger concepts to children. We just have to break it down and to their level.
Sometimes we get asked questions that dumbfound us. Like, for example, where is God? Why can't I see God? Why did God create us? Things like this.
Yes, they dumbfound us because we never thought about these questions before. We just saw the things in the way we have been acculturated to believe. And it is especially important for parents raising children as Muslims in Canada and wherever Muslims are minorities. In fact, in all of the modern world, because so much is happening in the modern world that is vastly different from the situation of life as we experienced it as we were growing up, that kids will come with new questions, and we have to be prepared to answer these questions. Parents, to do a good job of parenting, especially as Muslim parents trying to raise children in an environment that is not conducive to the development of this faith in a natural way, would have to do the extra work of learning themselves. So they have to investigate the questions that children are asking and find ways to answer them. You know, there are books of imponderables like Why is the Sky Blue? And that too can stump many parents.
And kids do ask
those kinds of questions. So we need to be educated in that way too, to, you know, get a book of imponderables and be ready to ask the kinds of questions that kids ask. But also from the point of view of the faith, of conveying that to children, be well educated about the faith. And we don't have to always explain everything in detail to a child, but we explain according to the level of the child and what the child could understand. But we should never give false information, like, you know, saying the stork brought the baby, for example, because this is false, and when the child grows to a certain age, they will realize that they've been given false information, and they might start questioning other things that they have been told. What else have they been told that is false? We put their minds now in a mindset that makes them skeptical of everything we have taught them before. But while we don't have to tell them anything false, we don't have to tell them everything that is true as well. We tell them that which their minds are ready to absorb. So we have an excellent book entitled The Miracle of Life that explains deeper secrets of human intimacy at the level of children. They may say something like, for example, you know, when the love between a father and a mother gives rise to the birth of children. So this is put in a very simple manner.
Of course, this is for an older age group, right?
According to the level that they could understand, right?
So how would you teach children to develop a relationship with God, to feel a sense of love for God, to want to please God, that sort of thing?
I think just by sheer example. We say that, you know, I love you as a child, you love me because I'm your parent. You know, I brought you into the world in a way, and this is why you love me, but someone brought me and all of our previous generations into the world, grandma and grandpa, you know, someone brought all of us into this world, and that's the one that we owe our final and ultimate thanks to, and this is why we pray. We give thanks to God who brought us into the world. So I think they can understand that. And they might, of course, have a conception that there's some older person that's older than grandma and grandpa that brought us into the world. They may misunderstand. Michael Poole, in his book Science and Belief, mentions a story that he cites where somebody told the girl asked the dad, what is God like? And he said that God is something, very, very sweet. And the girl then thought, oh, then God must be like rice pudding. So the language we use, it's inevitable that we'll use some language and we'll try to convey the idea in some way. And the children will develop some perception, much of it, which some of that perception may be incorrect, but they'll correct themselves over time as a child grows up, develops, and realizes that, God doesn't wait for us to get rain. God sends us rain through a certain process, but it is God who does that.
Of course, in the past, we thought about religion in terms of things like rules and in terms of punishment, and we don't want to, in the modern age, we don't think of religion in that way, and I guess we wouldn't convey that to children.
Yes, of course, much of the punishment that Muslims speak about is overemphasized. We should emphasize the love and the mercy and kindness and forgiveness of God. So we need to put that in proper perspective.
All right, nicely put. Thank you for that, Brother Shabir.
You're welcome.
We'll take a break. When we return, we answer common questions about Islam.